which is a safe space to discuss mental. Welcome to Mind Haven, which is a safe space to discuss mental health and lived experience by non-professionals. If you're in crisis, please dial or text 988. For service members and veterans, it's 838-255. For LGBTQ plus people, you can visit thetrevorproject.org. Please do not DM any hosts or participants. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Okay. And of course, my phone has to go off right when that happens. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mind Haven. This is Nero D, and our guest today is Erin O'Brien. Tig and Sushi are not here today, so it's just the two of us. And that will make it a little bit longer. I am not seeing us live on the Substack side. Refresh. Oh, here we are. Here we are. Okay. So, here we go. Hi, Christopher Carrazas. All right, so we've got 3 people in the lives, in the 4 people. Hi, Tamara. I hope I said that right. Anyways, this is Erin O'Brien, Substacker and author of My Jellyfish Life and a couple other publications. Today, she is here with us to talk about grieving her mother and having to come back to the U.S. to, if I got that right, come back to the U.S. to plan her funeral and arrange her estate without her husband because he wasn't able to attend. And I will just go ahead and let you introduce yourself and set up the frame.
Okay. I will do my best. I'm Erin O'Brien. I started my Substack about a little over a year ago. I've always wanted to write. I always knew that at some point that would be part of my life. For almost 30 years, I was a public school teacher. And then I worked in the corporate world for a few years. And during that time, I met my husband, who lives in Cuba. He's a Cuban citizen. And I ended up leaving my corporate job because it was not, it got to a point where it was no longer compatible with this long distance marriage that I had. And so at that point, that was when I decided to start being serious about writing and started my Substack. And I'm not sure where to go from there.
Well, you were telling me initially, like, how you met your current husband.
Yes.
And that was a pretty good, I don't know, it tugs at the heartstrings. Way to just like tell everyone like how you met your husband, and that way you can get into your mom passing. And
okay. So I would say I'm finding like a lot of other people, when I turned 50, it was really a turning point in my life. I was very unhappy at that time. I was very unhealthy. Actually, it didn't even occur to me to share that particular picture with you. I have pictures of me from that time that are dramatically different from how I look now. And there was something about the moment of turning 50 and it was also coincided with COVID, and leaving the teaching profession. So it was like kind of all these things happened all at once, and it made me just really reevaluate kind of like where I had been and where I was going and what the rest of my life was going to look like. And I started kind of for the first time in my life making decisions and doing things just simply for myself. And one of those things was deciding to travel to Cuba. I had always wanted to go there. It was always in the back of my mind that I would go there someday, ever since I was a little kid. I think I was probably in 5th grade when I first learned anything about the existence of Cuba. And I remember looking at pictures of Havana and just like thinking I have to go there. And so in early 2023, a friend of mine who I often travel with, we were out for dinner one night. We had just come back from Mexico. He had gone to Mexico with me because I was having some dental work done there. And he said, when are we going to Cuba? And I was like, we just got back from Mexico. And he said, yeah, but you've always wanted to go. We should just go. COVID was kind of winding down at that point, and we hadn't really been able to do anything during those couple of years. And so he kind of talked me into, we were just going to go to Cuba just for no particular reason, just because I wanted to. And it was a short trip. We were only there for about 6 days. And during that trip, which I planned the whole trip using the Lonely Planet guide. And there was a restaurant that was mentioned in the guide that was in Kohimar, which is where Hemingway docked his boat. It's also the setting of The Old Man in the Sea. The Old Man in the Sea opens and closes at a bar called La Terraza de Kohimar, and that's a real place that is still open. And so, I kind of wanted to see Kohimar. I had just read the book. And there was this other restaurant. They refer to them as Paladares in Cuba. They're privately owned restaurants. They started out as restaurants, like literally inside people's homes. And now a lot of them are more kind of, restaurant-ish. Doesn't feel like necessarily you're eating in someone's living room anymore, but they're small privately owned restaurants. And there was one particular one in Kohimar that we wanted to go to. And it was a half-day experience of going there and getting a tour of a nearby organic garden. And then you'd go back to the restaurant and do a cooking class, and they'd show you how to mix a mojito, and then you'd have lunch. And so we traveled to Kohimar to do this. And when the English-speaking guide in the restaurant walked us over to the garden, the man who I am now married to was the one who gave us the tour. And so we spent about 45 minutes touring his garden. His garden is absolutely amazing. And, he explained to us the various things that he grows there. And he knows a lot of homeopathic remedies that he makes with the plants that he grows, and has all these techniques that he's learned over the years for just managing the work of having a garden in a place where resources are very, very scarce, and things like water availability is unpredictable. And so we learned a lot through that tour. And at the end of it, after we went back to the restaurant, I said to my friend, I really want to support Jesus's work. And he said, well, you should friend him on Facebook. And I said, I'm never going to find him on Facebook. His name is Jesus. There've got to be so many Cubans named Jesus on Facebook. And he said, no, I remember his whole name. And so the two of us together, found Jesus on Facebook, and I friended him. And we corresponded over the next 6 months or so as I was planning a return trip to Cuba. I knew I wanted to go back because 6 days is very short, and I wanted to see more. And so by the time I went back, and this, actually, I didn't tell you this part. My second trip to Cuba was actually with my now ex-husband and my 2 younger children. My first husband and I had already decided to divorce at that point, but we are still friends and get along really well. And so we traveled to Cuba together. And the 4 of us actually spent a day with Jesus and his wife. He was married at the time, and her mother. They cooked a meal for us, and we spent a whole day hanging out with them. And I should have sent you that picture that we took at the end of that day. It's a really great picture. We're all in it. And soon after that, after I went back to the United States, Jesus told me that his wife had become very ill, and she was hospitalized. And she was in the hospital for about a month. During that time, I was sending food deliveries for her because there were only a few things that she could eat. And he was sending me daily updates about her condition. I became friends with their daughter, who is here in the United States, and she and I were corresponding. And after about a month in the hospital, she passed away. And then after that experience, Jesus and I were very close friends at that point. And we talked frequently in the weeks after his wife died. And after a few months, our relationship kind of grew out of that.
That's a pretty amazing story.
Yeah.
So, and he wasn't able to be with you when you were dealing with the affairs of your mother's death. Do you want to? I know
Yeah.
you wrote
So
about that, a very beautiful blog entry about that. If
thank
anybody
you.
hasn't read it, it's her newest one called Ashes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, you go ahead. I don't want to steal the stage.
Oh, that's okay. And interrupt me whenever you want, because I don't want to talk too much either. So yeah, so you know, like I said, we just sort of, our relationship just sort of developed. There was never really a moment when we acknowledged that it existed. But within a few months, he and I were a couple, and you know, I've been traveling back and forth to Cuba regularly since then. And in November of 2024, Jesus and I got married in Cuba. And I filed the petition to bring him here to the United States, but that petition is it's just simply not being processed. So he is not able to come to the US. And so the only time I see him is when I travel to Cuba. So in April, I was down there for 2 weeks. And then just maybe 7 or 8 days after I came back to the US, my mom died. And yeah, it was just awful. Although I still have a lot of support from my ex-husband. He has been amazing through this process, but the emotional support, obviously, I wanted from my husband, who I'm married to. And it was really, really hard to be separated when all that was going on. And it was very emotional also because he had lost his mom last January. So that's still fresh for him. He had lived with his mother his whole life. Our house has like 3 different living areas in it, with 3 separate entrances. It's like 3 apartments in one house. And so his parents had one section of the house, his brother and sister-in-law had the other section, and then we have the upstairs. So he had lived with his mother his whole life. So that loss was extremely significant for him. And then when my mom died, it brought all that up again. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. So apparently I can only have 10 images on the stage ready. So why don't I share some of those and you can talk us through them.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Here's we'll start with the ones of your mom, since we're just going to go in order that they're what. Okay, that's not the one I meant to pull up, but you can tell us about that one.
So that is actually, I realized as I was sending you photos that I do not have any photos of the front of our house. I'm going to have to take some next time I'm down there. But that is the view from our balcony of our house in Cuba. Our section of the house is it's a big house, like I said, because there are 3 apartments in it, but our section of it is pretty small. But we have this beautiful balcony, and if from a different direction, you can actually see the water, which is cool.
Yeah, that's just a gorgeous shot. I would love that view every day.
Yeah, that's actually the sunrise.
Wow.
So that's facing east. So I love going out on that balcony when the sun's coming up.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, so that one's done.
And then that's a picture of me with my mom. I don't have, that's obviously from a long time ago. That was my college graduation. So that's 35 years ago. I don't have a lot of pictures of me with my mom. I tended to be the one taking pictures most of the time. So I had to go back pretty far to get one of the 2 of us together.
That had to really hit.
Yeah. Yeah. I very much regret that we didn't take more pictures together.
Yeah.
That is, unfortunately I had to take photos of photos, so there's a little flaw in that one. But that is a picture of my mom with my nephew. So that would have been like 26 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then there's another one, I think, of her with my younger son.
I'm trying to get to it. The computers or the scroll bar is not cooperating. Is that it?
Yeah, so that's my mom with my younger son. My older son's elbow was in that picture. Unfortunately, his face wasn't in it. But yeah, so I wish I had more recent pictures, but I didn't have any on my phone. So I had to pull from the physical photos that I have.
Okay, and then this is Jesus, right?
Yeah, so that's Jesus in his garden. That's like his happy place. The garden is in the yard of the house that belongs to his mother-in-law. And she and I are actually very close. People correct me all the time when I say my husband's mother-in-law. They think I mean my mother-in-law. Yeah, but it's actually my mother-in-law, as I said, passed away last January. But his mother-in-law, the mother of his first wife, is one of the closest people in the world to him, and has always treated me like a daughter. I just love her. When I'm in Cuba, we eat lunch at her house almost every day. And he and his brother built this garden in her yard. She has a small house, but a gigantic yard. They have like over 50 banana trees back there, mangoes, avocados, coffee plants, and then tons of fruits, vegetables, and herbs that he grows in the growing beds that he has there.
Okay. There's a couple comments on the Substack side. I tried to paste it in our private chat here, but there's two different people. So Stacy Carney asked, I remember when my grandmother died. She had cancer. It was very sad for her. It was so many years ago. Okay, she didn't ask. She was saying. And then Chris Resists asked, how is Jesus doing with the Cuba fuel energy crisis? Is he okay? Is he safe?
Yeah, so that's a rough one. And it's another layer kind of strain on me being here, not always knowing what's going on there and not having complete control over what happens. I did put solar panels on our house. I made that decision the day after the most recent round of horrible sanctions was announced in January. And I don't regret it. It was a quick decision. But I just knew that we had to go forward with it. So we have solar panels on the roof of the house now. So the house has power around the clock.
That's great.
It definitely makes life a lot easier. It just was such an emotionally overwhelming thing after they were installed, and it was so fast. The guy who did it was in and out in a day. So they woke up in the morning without power, and by the end of the day had 24/7 power. So that was amazing. It changed his father so much. The stress of living with the extended blackouts that they've been experiencing was really wearing on his dad, who's 84 years old. It means that if the power is only on for 3 hours and those 3 hours happen in the middle of the night, you have to get up in the middle of the night. You have to get up and do your cooking. You have to get up and boil water.
Oh, wow.
All water has to be boiled and filtered in order to be drinkable. It's just an incredibly stressful situation. So having the solar panels has made an enormous difference. But it doesn't fix everything. There still is a huge water availability issue because without power, the way water works in Cuba is that houses have cisterns in the front yard. It's a little different for the apartment buildings, but a house will have a cistern in front and water is delivered to the cistern. And then you have to pump water up to tanks on the roof in order to have running water in the house. So when there's not power, the water deliveries don't happen. So like on my most recent trip, we missed 5 water deliveries.
Wow.
And we were down to bathing out of buckets because the tanks on the roof were empty. And so we were carrying buckets up to our house from the cistern. So, there are some things that I can't control. and water is one of them. And that's really scary. The hospital system is on a shoestring right now. Like the hospitals are all but shut down. So I worry constantly about any kind of medical crisis or, needing any kind of emergency treatment because it may not be available. So he's doing okay, but there is still a lot of fear there. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh no, I said, how do you get sleep with all that? Like,
I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is Cubans are very calm. Like, it's really hard to rattle Cubans. They are so used to struggling in so many different ways. They just are very, very calm, and they don't freak out when there's a crisis. And so it's kind of rubbed off on me. Yeah. I'm so sorry. What did you say?
I said you're describing my neighbors who are from Cuba.
Yeah. Just very, oh, it's just the next thing. It's just the next thing. Like, what can you do? You just deal with it. Okay. So that has definitely rubbed off on me.
All right. And this picture is...
So that is a picture of Jesus and me and his mother-in-law, the mother of his first wife. And one of the things that we always do when we go over to her house is have coffee. Coffee is a very big deal in Cuba. It's a very social thing. You get these tiny little cups of coffee, like, literally like a few tablespoons of coffee. But it's a very big part of daily life. So that was a picture of us having coffee together.
Like Turkish coffee I had once, and it's like in a tiny little cup.
Yeah.
It was so good though. Oh, best coffee ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Cuban coffee is amazing. Kind of similar to Turkish coffee. It's sweet, but more like espresso.
Okay. And
that's another shot of his garden.
Okay. What does he grow in there? What is all that stuff?
So the front growing bed, that's all chives. Oh, it's hard to get a picture of his garden because it's kind of like everything's kind of the same color. So it kind of all blends together. But I mean, he grows a ton of stuff. He's got Spanish oregano, which if you've never seen it, Spanish oregano leaves are like this. They're huge. They have the same flavor and scent as the oregano that we're used to, but the leaves are like the size of your hand. He has parsley, he has celery, he's got tomatoes. You can see some aloe vera next to the big tree on the left. Like I said, he grows a lot of things that he uses for homeopathic remedies. Rosemary, chamomile. I can't even remember everything he grows in there. Just a huge variety of stuff. And like I said, the banana, you can kind of see the banana trees on the left. He's got about 50 of those, bananas and plantains. And then the tree on the right is avocado.
My neighbor, he cooks, the younger one, he cooks a lot on the propane grill. And he gave me grilled, I think they were plantains once. And they were like really crispy on the outside, kind of good.
Yeah. Oh, I love fried plantains. So yeah. So when they're ripe, you fry them. And when they're not quite ripe, then you make tostones. Also fried, but they're not sweet. They're like crispy, like thick potato chips almost.
Yeah, the plantain that I had, the fried or grilled plantain, wasn't sweet. It was more savory.
Yeah. And
that's your beach.
Yeah, so that's the coastline. It's Kohimar has a rocky coast. Jesus spends a lot of time there. And sometimes we go down there, like before we had the solar panels, we would especially go down there when it was really hot, and literally just like sit in the water to get relief. It's very beautiful. I mean, unfortunately, like a lot of places in Cuba, there's a big problem with garbage right now. So that's a big issue. It definitely takes away from the beauty of the coast, just because, without gas for garbage trucks, it's a real issue. So the garbage just piles up. There is a guy in our community who started an initiative to get people out there to clean up at the coastline. So I was really happy to see that happening. But that is the area where Jesus and I scattered my mom's ashes.
Yeah. And the way you described the ocean that day, do you want to recap that with the audience really quick?
Yeah, so that was actually the subject of my most recent piece on my Substack. I decided when we cremated my mom to hold back a little bit of her ashes, and I took them to Cuba. I was very, very emotional over the fact that my mom never got to go there. And I said this in the piece that I wrote, but my mom and I had a little bit of a complicated relationship. It wasn't always super close. But the best thing that I ever did with her was traveling. And we traveled to a number of different places together, mostly just the two of us, but we also got to take one trip to Rome with my grandma, who had never been there. And when we traveled, the dynamic between us was just very different. That was when it was the easiest. And I really, really enjoyed traveling with her. So it made me so sad that by the time I wanted to take her to Cuba, her health just didn't allow it. Yeah, so she did not get to meet Jesus. She didn't get to see that aspect of my life, which was really hard because it's so, so important to me. Cuba has become my home, and I wanted my mom to see that. And that's actually a picture of our wedding. The one that you just pulled up, that's at our wedding. We got married in an office because marriages are civil in Cuba. So I always say it was a little bit more like closing on a house than like a marriage ceremony. It was a lot of waiting and a lot of signing documents. But that was the moment after we got married. And the registrar who married us said that we were the happiest couple she had ever seen.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna see if you were gonna talk about the prompt to the marriage.
Oh, okay. I was gonna finish what I was saying about taking my mom's ashes. And then I'll come back to that. Yeah. So I decided to take some of my mom's ashes to Cuba because she had not been able to go there. And the other piece of it was that I wanted my husband to have a concrete role in kind of saying goodbye to her. He did get to have a phone conversation with her on my last trip before she died. So I was very, very grateful for that. She helped to pay for the solar panels. So, he really wanted to thank her directly. So I know enough Spanish now that I was able to translate between the two of them. And they had a long conversation on the phone. So I was so glad that we did that. So I took her ashes to Cuba, and he and I walked down to the coast here, which is that's where he released his wife's ashes as well. And so, he kind of did that for me. I couldn't quite do it myself. I ended up being a lot more emotional than I thought I was going to be. And so he kind of took over and handled that for me while I was standing there with him, watching him. And the thing that I said about the ocean was that usually we have waves. You can see that in the other picture that you showed, but that day the sea was just completely calm. I've never seen it like that before, where there were no waves at all. So it actually ended up being a very beautiful experience.
Yeah. So what's this picture?
That's the moment before he was opening that. You can't see the jar in that picture, but I had her ashes in a little white jar. I impulsively, as he was opening that jar, I thought, I want to take a picture. I didn't want to miss experiencing what was happening, but I wanted something some visual reminder of it. So I took some pictures right before he poured the ashes into the water. And so that was one of them.
Yeah, that is some incredibly clear and still water. I mean, it looks like he's standing on a cliff's edge overlooking like some.
Yeah, I know. He actually has a foot in the water there.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think we were going to talk about the prompt or what led up to you getting married.
Oh yeah. So once we became a couple, I can't remember if I said it when after we were live or when we were talking before, but our relationship just sort of happened. Like there was never a moment when it was like, okay, we're together now. Like it just sort of evolved. And then the next time I went to Cuba, we were a couple. Like we never really had a conversation about it or anything. It just happened. And we were only together as a couple for a matter of maybe 2 or 3 months before we knew that we were going to get married. And so there was a ton of paperwork that I had to do. I had to finalize my divorce because, like I said, my ex-husband and I had decided quite a while before that we were going to get divorced, but we were very friendly and, we have kids together. We still have all 3 of our kids still live at home. 2 of them are adults, but all 3 of them live at home. So, we're co-parenting kids together, and we just kind of never got around to actually doing the divorce part. So we got that done. And then I had to get a copy of my divorce decree, had to have it notarized by the Secretary of State here in Illinois, where we got divorced. I also had to get my birth certificate notarized by the Secretary of State in the state where I was born, which is not Illinois. So fortunately, my son had a trip planned to that state. It all just worked out so perfectly. And my son took my birth certificate with him, got it notarized, went to the Secretary of State in that state and got it notarized. And then once I had those notarized copies, I then had to send them to the federal State Department and have them legalized there. Then I had to get them translated into Spanish, which with notarization of the translation, then I had to fly to Washington, D.C. to go to the Cuban embassy and get them approved there. So it was my divorce decree and birth certificate ended up being a 50-page packet with all the legalization certificates and the apostilles and the translations and all that. And then I took all that with me to Cuba, and then we went to the International Law Office in Havana, and that was where we got married. That's where that picture was taken that you showed.
Okay. I don't think I have any more pictures to show. I went back to the chats, and I ended up adding one of them twice.
I'm laughing at the comment about Marco Rubio and the shoes.
Oh, yeah.
What I will say about that is that Marco Rubio has never put a toe in Cuba. He has literally never been there.
Yeah.
And that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, we're not overtly partisan political on this show. We try not to be anyways.
Yeah.
Although me and my co-hosts are pretty much politically aligned. So I was just asking the chat if anyone had any questions for you. And it's, hey, Kimmy. And it seemed to be pretty quiet. Hit the hearts. I'm really, really appreciating Erin's story right now. Does anybody have anything they want to say about that or any questions they have? Can just type it in the chats. We have 10 people on the Substack side. I haven't even looked at the YouTube or Twitch side. So we can comments. StreamYard will actually show the comments from YouTube and Twitch. So I don't have to toggle over to those two, but I'm going back and forth between this and Substack. Yeah, it's kind of a lot. Is there anything else that you want to elaborate on?
I mean, I guess I can talk about what it has been like since my mom died, because that has been it's I wrote something on Substack the other day, or maybe it was yesterday. I don't know. My sense of time is so distorted right now that there are times when it really hits me how difficult this is, living here with my husband there, and not being able. I can't talk to him whenever I want. One of the consequences of the constant blackouts is that if there's a every area is divided into zones in terms of the electrical grid. And our house in Kohimar is right on the border between two zones. So our next door neighbors will have electricity when we have electricity all the time because of the solar panels, but when our power from the street is cut, the next door neighbors will still have it, and vice versa. And the nearest cell phone tower is in that zone that's next to us. So sometimes our power from the street will be out. We'll still have a cell phone signal, but then theirs goes out and then the cell phone signal goes away. So I cannot reach Jesus whenever I want. Sometimes there's enough cell phone signal to have a text conversation, but we can't call each other. Because it's a video call and we do that through WhatsApp. And if there's not a strong enough signal, that it won't support the video. So that is really a challenge. And I struggle with anxiety. I have struggled with anxiety most of my life. And so, at times, like there are the worst thing is when I can't say goodnight to him. That's like the worst, when we can't talk to each other before I fall asleep. I hate falling asleep, not being able to talk to him and know how his day went and know that everything is okay. That's probably the worst. And my anxiety just sometimes will kind of start to spin out of control, and I'll start imagining, bad things happening that I don't know about. I'll think, well, maybe the reason he didn't contact me is because he got hurt. Maybe he had to go to the hospital. Maybe, who knows? And so sometimes when there were the island-wide blackouts, there have been at least 5 blackouts of the entire country all at once, and no communication at all was possible during that time. So that was like 48 hours of no communication of any kind. And that is really a difficult thing to cope with at the same time that I'm coping with grieving my mom.
Okay. I've got a question from Karen C. Book Collector that I posted in our private chat. Can you see it?
How easy or difficult is it to travel back and forth to Cuba? That one? Yeah. So it actually is a lot easier than people think. There is a huge irony in the fact that U.S. policy over the last few months has decimated the tourism industry in Cuba. Up until this year, about 750,000 Canadians traveled to Cuba every year, and now all Canadian airlines have suspended all flights. So there are still Canadians going because they can fly through third countries if they're really determined. Obviously, it's more expensive. Obviously, it takes more time. But the flights from the United States are continuing. Thank God for me. But we have about 12 commercial flights to Cuba every day.
I did not even know we had flights to Cuba.
Yeah. So I fly on Southwest. I go Tampa to Havana. Southwest only flies to Havana, but American flies to Holguin. They fly to Santiago on the eastern end of the island. There's at least one other city that American flies to. So American goes through Miami, and so does Delta. United is the only U.S. airline that is no longer flying to Cuba. So there's like 12 flights a day. In order to legally fly to Cuba, you have to identify one OFAC. OFAC is Office of Foreign Assets Control. They administer the various sanctions that are in place. So they have a list of 12 what are called licenses, although there's no physical paperwork involved. You just basically have to declare which license you're traveling under. So before my husband and I got married, I would travel under I think it's the 9th license in the list, which is support for the Cuban people. And basically anybody can travel under that OFAC license. I now travel under family visit because obviously I am visiting my family. I'm visiting my legal husband. But anyone who wants to fly to Cuba, it's just as simple as booking a ticket. And then, knowing that you're going to have to declare support for the Cuban people typically is the reason for going down there. There are some rules that go along with that. You're not supposed to stay in any state-owned hotels. That's never a problem because there are so many private residences where you can stay. And the experience is actually better, frankly, staying in Cuban homes.
How come you can't stay in state-owned hotels? I'm just curious.
Because they're sanctioned by the United States.
I see. Yeah. When I was living in China, there were hotels I couldn't stay at because I was a foreigner.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's not Cuba that prevents us from staying there. It's U.S. law.
Yeah. They had to have a special license to host foreigners. So yeah, there were a lot of hotels I couldn't stay at, but like the big chain ones that were there, that I could. But so they're all like state-owned. That's interesting.
Yeah, so there are some privately owned hotels. There's a list that's online of all the places that U.S. citizens are not supposed to stay. But the private homes, it's that falls within the support for the Cuban people license. So you just can never travel to Cuba for purposes of tourism is technically not legal in the U.S. On the other hand, Cuba considers any foreign visitor to be a tourist. So it gets a little confusing because like when you buy your visa to enter Cuba, it is a tourist visa. That's what it's called. So just kind of knowing how to navigate those nuances of how this all works is really the biggest thing in terms of traveling there. So anybody who enters Cuba has to purchase a tourist visa. I always say it's kind of like a fishing license. It's not really a visa because you don't have to, submit any documentation to an embassy or get approved or anything like that. It's literally just a thing that you buy online. It's like a tax for entering the country. And then there's a customs form that has to be filled out ahead of time. That's done online. So, those are basically the requirements for entering Cuba. And it's really not difficult. It's just a matter of kind of figuring out the particulars of how it works.
How many times have you flown there now?
21.
Wow. That's a lot of miles. I think that's more times than
Yes.
Definitely more times than I've flown abroad. It might be more times than I've flown altogether.
Yeah, I have a lot of Southwest points. Yeah, I mean, I'm down there. Up until this year, I was down there about 25% of the time.
Wow.
I'm down there a little bit more now. Probably closer to like 30% of the time I'm in Cuba, just because the more time goes by, the harder and harder it is to not be with my husband all the time. It's just very difficult. And, like I said, with the outages and the difficulties communicating, I can't take being separated from him and not being able to communicate when we want. So I've increased my travel.
I can imagine. Has there ever been any consideration of like relocating to like Costa Rica or something?
So there are many, many countries where Cubans cannot Cubans can travel. I mean, my husband has a Cuban passport, but you have to have somewhere to go where you can get in. And there are a number of countries that have no problem letting Cubans in, but in order to get to them, you have to fly through the United States. So he can't fly through the United States.
Oh, wow.
It's like the country will let you come in, but there are no direct flights from Cuba to that country. So you have to go through a third country where you have to have a visa. And so, like, for example, to get a visa for Mexico, I know some people who've done it. It has taken years to obtain a visa. So there isn't really anywhere where we can go together.
That's hard. Like it's kind of like a U.S. in that way as an abuser in the situation, just completely controlling the movement and resources of Cubans and isolating them. It's horrible.
Yes. For sure.
I was
Yeah.
shocked to hear that they can only fly to the U.S. first.
Yeah, I mean that's not for every single place, obviously, but there are, I mean, other Caribbean islands. Like the only way to get there is to go through a third country where you need a visa, like Mexico or the United States, typically, because logistically it just can't be done. There are not direct flights between those countries and Cuba, and it's even worse now because so many countries have stopped their flights to Cuba because of the increase in the sanctions. So, like Spain is still running flights to Cuba. Russia stopped their flights for a while, but they may have restarted them. I'm not sure about that. China is still flying to Cuba. There are still flights from Mexico, but there were a number of countries that suspended their service.
Wow. I just kind of breaks my heart a little bit. Not just the difficulties he's causing for you and your husband, but for Cubans in general.
Yeah. Things are very, very hard for Cubans right now. And that's another whole emotional layer of the whole thing, because my husband isn't the only person that I care about in Cuba. And, my immediate family, like I said, they have electricity with the solar panels that we installed, but I also have friends there. I have a friend who lives in Vinales and has an infant son. And Vinales is going sometimes 36 hours at a time without electricity. So I don't hear from him very often. And it also has become very difficult for Cubans to move within the island because of the lack of fuel. So that's another level at which they're being isolated. Supply chains are being disrupted. The farther you are from Havana, the harder it is.
And I can imagine like dealing with a really hot, humid heat without air conditioning.
Yeah. So at our house, and this just sort of evolved organically, but I can't remember if I said this before, but when we got the panels, my husband ran a line to the house next door, which is where his cousin lives. So his cousin also uses our electricity, and then he bought a big, heavy industrial extension cord so that he could run it to our neighbors. The houses are very close together, so we have like 5 neighbors that are like could almost touch their houses from our property. And so he runs the extension cord over to them so that they can pump water to their roof. So he's supporting the neighbors as much as possible. And then throughout the day, we have a stream of people that come and go to our gate to bring their rechargeable fans so that we can charge them. And it's just so funny. I sat at the front of the house one day and just watched people just show up at the gate with their bag with the fan in it. And, my father-in-law will just take it and plug it in. And then a couple hours later, they come back and they collect their fan. And so, we're supporting our neighbors as much as we possibly can.
That's very generous. Well, we've got about 12 minutes left now. Why don't I throw up the QR code so that people can find you a little better, and you can talk about your Substacks with like 3 of them.
I only have one. I am I'm a contributor on 2 others. So there was a piece that I wrote. So the one that you read that was called Ashes, that was kind of like a part 2 of my experience with my mother's death. The original piece that I wrote, it was funny because I gained a lot of subscribers right after my mom died, because on the day she died, I posted a note about her death, and it wasn't intentional. It was like, I don't even know where to go with what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And I just posted a note about it. And I think those were the exact words that I said. I don't know where to go with what I'm feeling. And Substack has just kind of become like my safe space to process some, a number of things that I experienced. And so I posted about my mom's death, and it got this huge response, and I gained quite a lot of subscribers through that. And at some point, I'm going to consolidate all of the responses that I got to that note, because there were a couple hundred comments, and the vast majority of them were so wonderful. And one of the things that people kept saying over and over again was right. And so I did. I listened to that advice. And what'd you say?
I said, I'm glad you listened. Like, I feel like my advice is a little bit richer having reading just that post. Like, I started to read the one before it, Sunset. I'm gonna have to go back to it, or maybe it was the Memorist or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so it's on my Substack, and I also republished it on the Memorist.
Okay.
But I don't know if I would have done it if so many people hadn't said, write what you're feeling, write what you're experiencing. Like, I was so focused on what do I have to do, because I'm the only one left on that side of my family. I only had one sister, and she died 18 years ago. So when my mom died, it's just me. I mean, my children, obviously, but I'm the one who has to handle everything. And so I was focused on that. And I don't know if I would have set aside time to write what I was experiencing if I hadn't had so many people make that suggestion. And I am so, so grateful that I did, because there is so much that I would have forgotten about that experience. You think that you'll remember because the feelings are so big, but you don't. Like, it's like your brain can't process long-term memories when it's so busy processing the grief. And so I was so grateful that every few minutes, I would just stop and write what I was feeling. And that's where that post called Sunset came from. I was very, very grateful that I did that.
I am too. I'll go back to it later. I really did appreciate ashes. Having I haven't grieved any parent yet, but having had really deep griefs, a lot of it was resonated. It was very beautifully expressed.
Thank you.
The way I could just feel everything you were feeling just in your descriptions of the scenery, like the ocean, and the way you described the ashes, and it was very deep and moving to me.
Thank you. I'm really, really glad to hear that.
So we're closing in. We got like 8 minutes left. So why don't we move on to sharing a moment of joy? I don't know what you might have. I usually share a doodle that I'm working on or something. And I went back to an abandoned doodle that I'm still working on, but I decided to go over it with pen. I had abandoned it before because I used graphite in it. I went really dark. I thought, I can't fix this. But
I love that.
Working out. I don't know how you can see it. I've got the fake background on, so
when you pull it back, it's easier to see.
Yeah. That's my face. There we go.
So there's like some middle ground that's just perfect.
Yeah. Fussy background. Anyways, that's usually where I find my joy these days. Typically, when it gets to hotter weather, I don't draw as much and I write more because the lights that I use for drawing are really, really hot. And I haven't doodled for a couple of days because it's been hot. But yeah, that's my joy, writing and drawing usually.
I love that drawing that you shared. I hope you keep going with it. I said, I love that drawing that you shared. I hope you keep going with it.
Thank you. Thank you. So do you have a moment of joy that you can share?
I do. I actually just wrote about this on my Substack. So this little ring has been sitting on my table where I'm sitting right now. It's been there I don't even know how it got there. I don't know exactly where it came from. But I've been back and forth to my mom's house a lot over the last few weeks, and there's just like a lot of stuff. So I'm guessing that it came into my house that way, maybe, or maybe I already had it. I'm not sure, but it's just been kind of sitting on this table, and I kind of just, I looked at it, and I knew it wasn't anything like valuable. I didn't know where it was. I have such random stuff. I had like my grandmother's second husband's cufflinks, that are floating around my house somewhere, like lots of stuff like that. And so I thought it was, who knew what it was. But tonight I saw it sitting here when I sat down to get ready to do this live, and I picked it up and started looking at it, and I realized there were numbers on it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a class ring. And so I took a picture of the numbers because I couldn't read them because they're kind of worn down. And I zoomed in and I realized it said 1935.
Wow.
And then I took a picture of the inside of the band. This is my grandma's class ring.
That's cool.
And I had no idea what it was until tonight. So I was so excited. She has her initials inside the band. And I was just so excited when I realized that's what it was, because I no longer have my class ring. I grew up in the town next to the town that my grandmother was born in. My grandmother was born in 1917 in a little town called Tiscawa, Illinois. You would never stumble on it because it's like in a valley, like off of, not close to any highway or anything. It's a beautiful little town. Only about 1,000 people live there. And both my grandparents were born and raised there. And then when they got married, they moved to the town that I grew up in, which is where they raised my mom. And then I was born, like I said, in another state, but we moved back to her hometown when I was 6. So that's where I grew up. And I no longer have my class ring. It was stolen. We had a break-in to our house when my son was an infant, and they took almost every piece of jewelry I had, including my class ring. And I thought, oh, I'll just get another one. You can't. Like, it had been too long since I graduated. I couldn't get another one like it. And then I've been looking for my mom's class ring ever since she died, and I haven't been able to find it yet. So I was really, really excited to realize that that's what this is. It wasn't some random thing from a random person. It was actually my grandma's class ring. So that was very cool to find. It's almost 100 years old.
Yeah, that is a really cool find. I'm glad you have something there that brings you joy. We're getting more and more people coming in here at the last minute.
Oh no.
As we're starting to close it down. I never got a class ring. There's a lot that I didn't do in high school that I kind of wish I did, but at the time I was just kind of, I'm not exactly popular, and I don't have any dates or anything, so I didn't go to prom, and there's a lot I didn't participate in. I did participate in the band and choir trip to Disneyland.
Oh, cool.
Which we all had to raise our own money for to go. But I did do that. I didn't buy a class ring. Of course, I don't wear jewelry, so I mean, I kind of did then. But yeah, I kind of wish I had done that. I'm glad that you have your grandma's.
Yeah, it was especially cool because the class rings were actually made in my hometown. There was a Jostens was in my hometown. They used to make the Super Bowl rings for a long time. And there's the factory itself is still there. It's not called Jostens anymore, but so it was a big deal to get class rings in my hometown because they were made right there in our hometown. So everybody got one. But this is a Jostens class ring. So that's kind of cool to have that too.
You ready? Grandma says, Grandma comes through. Talking about class rings.
Yeah.
They're kind of expensive these days. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I bought one for my son.
Another reason why I didn't get one.
Yeah. No, they've gotten very expensive.
Yeah.
But for me, it's, just to have the ring that she wore is just very cool. And it's obvious that she wore it because you can see that it's like worn down. But that to me makes it more meaningful because it didn't just sit in a drawer somewhere.
QR code one more time for people, since some newer people came in, and you can find Erin's Substack QR code. I have pasted it into the chat several times as well.
I just realized I probably should have explained why I called it what I called it.
Go ahead. Yeah.
In case anybody's wondering. So when I started my Substack, like I said, it was kind of after I turned 50, you know, I started making all these changes in my life. I started refocusing on what was important to me, and I also was changing careers at the same time. So there were all these ways that I was starting over. And when I started my Substack, the image that kept coming back to me was the image of the immortal jellyfish. I don't know if you've ever heard of the immortal jellyfish, but it is a real thing. There is an actual jellyfish. It's teeny tiny. It's like 2 centimeters in diameter. And it is technically, theoretically immortal, because when it is subjected to stress or illness, it can revert to its juvenile state. It basically becomes a ball of stem cells and
Oh,
starts
wow.
over again. And it can do
Incredible.
that an infinite number of times. Obviously, it can be killed, you know, so it's not like
Yeah.
there's another word besides immortal. It's not that it can never die, but it can restart its life an infinite number of times. So in theory, they can live forever.
That's
And that's a real thing that lives on the earth. And I just thought that was so cool. And that is what kept coming back to me when I was thinking, you know, why am I doing this? What am I writing about? So that's the reason for the jellyfish.
Your grandma says, I like the reset button in a video game.
Yeah.
But anyways, we've run out of time, but thank you all for attending. And of course, if you didn't catch the whole thing, it's going to be posted as a recording later. And I will share it when that's finished. And I noticed that it's finished. But I really appreciate y'all coming, and thank Erin for coming on here and talking about or telling us her story today. It's a very beautiful story.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. And it would be pretty wonderful to have you back sometime.
Oh, I would love it.
Yeah. But anyways, I hope you all have a great Sunday night, and bye for now.
Thanks so much.
Is it done?